This took place probably close to 10 years ago now. A friend of mine and I had gotten into exploring supposed haunted places, and she had a lot of encounters down by a creek that ran through some woods by her house. We had a lot of weird things happen down there, but nothing stranger than this last encounter. It was myself, my then girlfriend, my friend, and her boyfriend. We decided to go for a walk around dusk. We were making our way along a path that followed the creek bed that ran into an old road that crossed the creek, but had been washed out some years back. The side of the road that we were making our way back to went behind and led into my friend's neighborhood. We reached the road when I had to relieve myself, so I told the group to go on, and I would meet up with them shortly. I made my way down a slight embankment and posted up at a random bush. While relieving myself, I saw a white flash. At first I thought of it nothing. My mind playing tricks or something. I saw it a second time, and I thought perhaps fireflies until I saw a flash a third time. What appeared to be a substantial shape moving beyond the brush. I immediately thought it was a jogger in a white running suit and thought they were about to see me relieve myself on this bush, so I quickly finished up trying not to expose myself to a complete stranger. However, what I saw was not a jogger. On the opposite side of the creek, I saw a dull, white humanoid figure that was featureless making its way up a path. I stood stunned for a moment and called out to my friends. However, only my friend's boyfriend came, and we stood there watching this thing move silently up the path for a moment. He went to get the flashlight that his girlfriend had, so he could get a better view of this thing. As soon as he got back with the flashlight and powered it on, this thing moved behind a tree. Our girlfriends made their way back to where we were standing to see what all the commotion was, but this thing was long gone. My friend's boyfriend and I made our way down into the creek and across to the path that we had just seen this thing walk up. We followed the path and made it to the tree. There was about 5 or 6 foot gap between the tree and the path we had seen this thing walk behind, but the drop was about 30 feet and the path actually made a 90-degree turn and went up a hill. I don't know what this thing was. I believe it to be a ghost, and it couldn't care less about us. At no point did it even appear to notice that we were watching it. As we made our way back to my friend's house, we all heard this weird moaning sound at what sounded like metal striking rock or something, like if you're digging with a shovel in a rocky soil. After what we had just witnessed, I didn't want to find out what that thing was. This happened on private property. My cousin owns land in western Wisconsin, where there's lots of hills and lots of deer. It's tradition for us to hunt on his property. My dad, cousin, and all their friends pitched in to build a hunting shack on the property and build up tree stands. We hunt on a schedule, so none of us hunt in the same area at the same time, both for our safety and in hopes of getting a deer. My dad and I took an ATV up a hillside. The sun wasn't quite up yet, and we wanted to get set for sunrise. We marked which hill we were going up on the schedule inside the hunting shack. Nobody else was there yet, but we marked it anyways in case my cousin and his daughter showed up. We waited until 9 a.m. and didn't see a thing, not even as much as a squirrel. We decided to get some coffee to warm up and then head back out. I followed my dad down the path, back to the ATV, and we stopped every so often to listen for deer. The only noises I heard were my footsteps and my dad's. About halfway to the ATV, I heard something else. It only happened when my dad and I walked. When my dad and I walked during deer hunting, I mimicked his footsteps so he'd make less noise. I stepped at the same time as him, however something behind me was making noise. It was like something was mimicking my footsteps. I spun around and peered into the trees. The sun still wasn't over the top of the hill yet, so we were in quite a bit of shade. I didn't see anything, so I continued to follow my dad down the hill, but I heard it again. This time I turned around when we were still walking, and I saw something duck behind the tree. A pale face poked out from about 30 yards up the hill and hid behind the tree again. It poked out again, and this time stayed staring down at us. I stopped and hit my dad's shoulder. He turned and saw it too. "Get to the four-wheeler," he whispered, and I didn't hesitate. I stared it down as my dad started up the ATV, and as we departed, the face's dark little shoulder came out from behind the tree, followed by the rest of its gnarled, malformed body. My dad hit the throttle and we got back to the hunting shack as soon as we could. Nobody else was there, so we got in the truck and left. I haven't been in those woods since. My dad was, and got a deer this morning, and acts like this never happened. I still think about it far too often. We were camping in Sequoia National Forest, and our campground was about as secluded as it gets. Just to reach it, you had to go down a treacherous one-way road, if you could call it that, for over an hour. We arrived in the afternoon to find the campground only had 2 other inhabitants, the campground host and an older lady with a little dog. We set everything up, cooked some dinner, and set it in to get some rest as the sun went down. Throughout the night, we would be awakened here and there by sounds, nothing out of the ordinary, for camping in the middle of the dense woods. Just things like branches snapping and things moving in the trees. Around 11 p.m., we heard something going through the bolted trash cans around the campground. Knowing we are in bear country, I beat my car a few times to try and scare off whatever curious creature was digging in there. This happened a few times. Whatever it was, it kept coming back. As the night went on, things got more and more strange. A meadow about 100 yards from where our tents were, there was populated by a few wild cattle earlier that day, with some kind of scene for something terrible going on. We heard the sounds of cows screaming bloody murder, like they were being torn apart. My initial thought was, cougars or a pack of coyotes, some kind of predator was destroying these cows up. It was obvious they were in great distress. But after that, there was a noise I heard that I've never heard any animal make. It was a loud, deep howling sound, almost like a portamento when it starts off low and rises higher and higher in pitch. It was loud. I could feel it in my chest vibrating. Needless to say, we were all pretty freaked. It didn't stop there. Along with the sounds of dying cows, we also heard things like massive branches being torn off the trees around us, something knocking against the trees, and at one point something big was walking around our camp. When we stuck a flashlight to the window in the tent, something massive went running by our tent, shaking the ground as it ran, and it was fast. Eventually all this commotion died down, but not before the howling/shriek let out again, this time further away into the woods. Of course, I didn't sleep at all that night. I anxiously waited for the sun to rise before I inspected the campground. Even though we had heard trash being ripped and bottles clinking together, the trash cans were not knocked over, and they were still chained shut, which we thought was odd because a bear surely would have made more of a mess. We searched for bear or cougar tracks, and the only thing we found were some human-looking tracks, like bare human feet, maybe a little bigger than normal size. I will say, I am far from conspiracy theorist. I'm a huge skeptic. The thought of Bigfoot I have always laughed off and made fun of, but this was freaking me out. The older lady who was in the campground next to us, she booked it out of there early in the morning, leaving in a hurry. As the day went on and the prospect of spending another night there, now being the only campers present, became less and less appealing. We packed up quickly before the sun got too low and got out of Dodge. On the way home, while discussing what had happened, my girlfriend pulled up various Sasquatch sounds recording on YouTube. Some were ridiculous, but one, I believe recorded in Ohio, sounded identical to what we heard. Let's just say I'm a little less skeptical now than I used to be. I frequently go bushwalking all throughout the Blue Mountains, and have done since I was a kid with my dad. Sometimes for shorter walks I go alone. Yeah, that could be dangerous. I could have added risk of being attacked or whatever. But I carry a couple of knives with me, so I don't really feel threatened, and always bring a satellite phone. I just love and crave that feeling of being entirely surrounded by the bush. Anyway, around 5 years ago, I thought it would be a good idea to do an overnight walk by myself. Terrible idea. The walk was fine. 3 or 4 groups of people came by the other way on the first day. Picked a little area to stay overnight towards dusk. Cut a few ferns back, and I had a space to stick my little one-person tent. I was about 30 meters from the track, mostly out of sight, behind trees and such. The usual wildlife noises were going on as I drifted to sleep, though there was a strange noise I can only describe. It as a bounding sound like someone was sprinting through the brush, right at me, but it went by way too fast with too few steps to carry a person that distance. Also, if you've ever seen the bush in the part of Australia, you know there isn't much space on the ground to walk freely if you're off the track. You have to at least wade through bushes, so you can't exactly sprint full speed without eating it. I felt a bit uneasy, but thought it probably just stuff falling from a tree or whatever. Next morning, I had breakfast and packed up my things, and I kept going along the track. Passed a couple of people going the other way, then was alone again for maybe half an hour. Then I heard the sound of a stick being broken, like from someone stepping on it. The sound came from behind me and to my left, away from the track. I turned around to look and nearly died on my feet. A fair distance into the bush was something standing there looking directly at me. I wanted to believe it was a person, but it wasn't. I can't judge the exact height, but it was obviously very tall. I'd guess 9 feet. Its skin was dark gray or brownish. It had horribly large head with huge black eyes. I couldn't see a mouth or anything. Its arms and legs were really long. I was almost crying. Tears welled up in my eyes, completely frozen, staring at this creature. It was like my legs were locked in position. The longer the stare went on between me and the creature, I had this ever-heightening feeling of absolute dread, like nothing I'd ever felt before. The fear built up until I could see my heart beat in veins and my vision, and I suddenly bolted. I sprinted away, continued on the track. I ran and ran. I was too scared to look behind me. Tears were streaming from my eyes as I was running away. I didn't stop until I actually caught up with some people going the same direction as me. They looked at me and were saying, "Oh my God, are you alright?" I was exhausted from running so hard for so long. I told them I saw something in the bush and asked if I could walk with them the rest of the way. It took me 6 months, but I did start bushwalking again, but I never go on these days. You couldn't pay me to do it. I like going for walks at night sometimes because I dislike people, but I've been trying to get into shape for a while now, so nighttime is great. For that, I have a routine through some fields, which are surrounded by cities and even highways. One major city's skyline is clearly visible from the paths I take on a normal night. Sometimes, however, we get really thick fog because of a mountain range. One night, I was out for a walk and super thick fog hit. It was fun at first. I couldn't even see the end of the light cone from my headlamp and barely saw one foot in front of the other walking my familiar path. Usually, you'd hear the sound of the highway close by since it's very busy all day and night, but at some point I noticed I didn't hear it anymore. As a matter of fact, I didn't hear anything but myself. There wasn't even wind. Mind you, I was in an open field, no trees to obstruct the wind, and there's usually always something. Knowing the area well, I just decided to keep on with my path and soldier on. After a while, I heard a sharp whistling. That in itself isn't too weird. People walk their dogs a lot in those fields, and it was far away. However, the whistling continued to sound through the night, and it seemed to get louder and closer. It was somewhat melodic. After a while, more like a song than someone trying to catch the attention of a dog or person. The really weird part was that it came from the direction of the open and very muddy field. Well, it got closer and closer. Sure, you could walk there, but you'd make plenty of noise and probably lose a shoe or two trying to wade through the mess. I tried ignoring it, but it creeped me out, so I kept on walking and slowly getting cold despite walking uphill and faster than usual. The whistling kept up, and out of the corner of my eye, I could sometimes make out a silhouette illuminated by my bobbing headlamp. That's when I started to really freak out. I live in Germany, and we have a tale around here, the Nebelpfeifer, which basically just translates to fog whistlers. There have been some historic accounts of them, with one of the major ones happening during the 30-Year War, where a small village close by Dusseldorf in 1622 was surrounded by heavy fog overnight. Whistling was heard all around throughout the night, and on the next day more than a dozen people were missing, never to be found again. It's said that Nebelpfeifer tried to lure unsuspecting victims closer. If you can whistle their favorite tune, you might survive. If not, they'll devour you. They'll stay right at the edge of how far you can see into the fog, and never come any closer. They also only really stalk people who are out and about alone, unless there's dire times like during many of the wars in Europe. Remembering that freaked me right out, and I basically ran home. I only experienced it once and probably got the best workout of my life, too. I wouldn't recommend it, though. These days when fog hits, I turn on my heel and head back home to work out another day. I'm not great enough of a fool to meddle with stuff like this.